Hello, everybody. This is Officer Maui from the Resource Officer podcast. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. For starters, it's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so they can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So don't hesitate. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Resource Officer. I am Officer Maui. Today we're going to be covering character counts. But before we get into all that, I wanted to give a kudos to my school system. Okay, I've been a school resource officer for a few years now, and I got to say that I'm very impressed and very happy with how business is conducted. It's very professional, it's fast and effective, especially when it comes to drills. The students work hand in hand with the faculty and the staff there, which is something I've experienced, but not to this level. And the reason I say that is because it makes my job easier. Instead of having to go around corralling the students and stuff, the faculty and staff, they have a set process, a plan in place, and it amazes me. So kudos to the school system. And no, this is not a form of me, sucking up or brown nosing, because I don't actually work for the education system. Okay, I work for a sheriff's department. So I just wanted to give credit where credit is due. So thank you to the faculty and staff for doing what you do and doing it in such a phenomenal way. So, character counts. What is character? Well, we're going to be covering the 6 pillars of character, which is a model. I did not create this model, but it is an excellent model to go by as far as trying to learn communication and build character within the youth and possibly even within yourself. Sometimes we have to take a good look in the mirror, and I like to use the term lead from the front. It's a military thing, especially in the Marine Corps, where I spent many years in. The 6 pillars of character cover trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. Those are the 6 pillars. So what do they mean? Well, trustworthiness is integrity, honesty, promise keeping, loyalty. Okay. Respect would be courtesy, autonomy, diversity, and it's also known as one of the golden rules. Responsibility is the duty, accountability, or pursuit of excellence. Fairness is the openness, consistency, and impartiality. Caring is the kindness, compassion, and empathy. Citizenship is the lawfulness, common good, and environment. So how does that pertain to you as an individual, or try to convey that to the youth? Well, our goal as adults or leaders is to promote the mindset of our youth to become a responsible, productive citizen, which will in turn help us understand our youth and communicate with them effectively. We build relationships needed to guide them in the right direction for success. That is our goal, or at least mine, especially. So to obtain that, we need to set objectives. There's an acronym called LEAFS. It's with 2 L's. The first L in LEAFS is listen. Second L is learn. The E is for educate. A is for acknowledge. F is for follow up and follow through. And S is for support. So let's go over the first L, which is listen. We need to learn to listen carefully. Some of us may do it better than others. Some of us are masters at it, and some of us just think we're listening, but we're really not understanding. So a person can listen, which means they can hear what's coming into their ears, but they're not really listening because they're not understanding what they're hearing. But first things first, to listen carefully, you have to remain calm. You can't yell. Yelling defeats the purpose of any communication. And the reason I say that is everybody knows if somebody comes at you with attitude, yelling, using profanity, things of that nature, you're going to shut down. You're not going to want to talk, and therefore you're not going to want to listen to what they have to say. Okay, so yelling is got to be something taken out of the equation. This is going to allow for effective information gathering, because now if you're talking in a normal tone and normal voice, or inside voice as some people say, your chances of you actually listening and understanding increases dramatically, because now you're more receptive to the information you're receiving. So you also got to show respect. Now this goes both ways. It's not just one way. It's a two-way street. Okay, if you show respect, you'll get respect back. And this is what I try to explain to the community and citizens. If you can calm down, and I know emotions get heightened in situations depending on what you're going through and the circumstances involved in the encounter and communication. By not yelling, calming down, and being respectful, you'll also get it back. This goes for me as a resource officer, as well as any citizen I encounter out in the community. Okay, if we can both show respect, you get respect back, and it builds a strong relationship. Okay? It helps to solve problem. It's the first step to solving a problem. Okay, but it also teaches us as the adults the principles that they come from, the level of intelligence the person is on, and what may be happening in their school, community, or life. In essence, if you listen to them, they will listen to you. Okay, that in itself is probably the most simplest way to explain listening. If you listen to them, they will listen to you. Not yelling, show respect, and we can solve some problems. So strengthen bonds and relationships. You want them to feel that they can come to you. This opens the lines of communication, enables the rights to know what is bad and good in their lives. It improves the likelihood that they will in turn listen and learn strong character skills from you, which goes into the 6 pillars. They will listen and learn these strong character skills like respect, trustworthiness, responsibility, citizenship, fairness, caring. It helps them to feel understood when you listen. The time and attention is valuable. So build their strength as a person to do right in life. You'll make an impact on the decisions that they make. So you got to have character. You have to be able to look in the mirror and ask yourself, do I really have the 6 pillars? All right. Am I trustworthy? You know, is my integrity intact? You know, and I don't mean just to put on a show for everybody else. Look, you know, doing the right thing and trustworthy, like a dog and pony show. I mean, you got to be able to do this when nobody else is looking as well. Okay. Am I respectful? I know this is something that I had to work on, because being from New York City, just the tone and the attitude of growing up in that environment seems to portray as an attitude when I talk to people. But in my mind, it's normal, because that's how I grew up and that's how people communicate. And if you've ever been to New York City, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. You know, that's why people say they're down south, everybody's kinder and things of that nature. And it's true for the most part. But you adapt in New York to that type of attitude. It becomes normal when you're in that environment, you know, and living in it and growing up in it. So respect is something that I had to learn. I had to learn how to communicate better and show more courteous when I speak. Responsibility. I take it upon myself to have responsibility, not just in my actions and what I do, but I always try to pursue excellence. I nowhere near perfect, don't get me wrong. Everybody, especially me, has room for improvement, but it is my responsibility for myself to seek self-improvement. You know, education is something that should be constant. And I'm not just talking about school, I'm just talking about just learning life skills in general. I also ask myself, especially as a law enforcement officer, the fairness. Am I consistent, impartial, and open to the level of communication? Now, to a certain degree, I have a lot of leeway with this, but at times the fairness, it's out of my hands only because I enforce the law. But for the most part, I will be open-minded. I communicate, I listen, I become caring, which is the next pillar. I show empathy because I try to put myself in other people's shoes. You gotta have some type of compassion, okay? Because for me, for example, as a law enforcement officer, you know, I can change a person's life for the good or the bad, depending on the situation. You know, you got to take everything by case by case, because if I arrest somebody, then I'm obviously changing that life. But sometimes by not making an arrest, depending on the crime and circumstances, you let the individual learn from that lesson. But this is where it goes to the communicating, or the two-way street thing. You know, the person you're communicating with has to ask themselves and look in the mirror. Am I trustworthy, respectful, responsible, fair, and caring? And then citizenship, the lawfulness, the common good. Okay? You got to be good to yourself, your community, your family, and just your overall environment. It's important. So, 6 pillars is important because of all that. These are the things that you got to have within yourself to help our youth, build strength in them as a person to do right in life. So this is how you make an impact on the decisions that they make. We all have great ideas. It will help bring out the inner part of themselves. So you listen with the intent to understand, ask respectful questions, and keep the conversations going. And by what I mean by respectful questions, I don't mean closed-ended questions, which require a simple answer. For example, is the sky blue? And the answer would be yes or no. You want to present open-ended questions, stuff to elicit information and keep the dialogue and the conversation going, because the more that happens, the more information you gather. So listening is probably the number one thing you can do as far as communication and showing your character. Make sense? Great. So what we'll do now is we'll take a short break and we will come back and we will continue with character counts and the other 6 pillars. Be back in just a moment. Welcome back. Before the break, we covered learning, which is the first L in Leafs. And now I wanted to cover over the second L, which is learn. And I mentioned earlier that listen, the first L, is probably the most important. But in all actuality, all of them are important. The way to make things effective is to be able to combine everything or find your flow, so to speak, to incorporate all these into your personality. So learning is learning from each other. Okay, we learn from each other in culture, neighborhood, family foundation, education levels, social groups, technology of generation, especially the students and their generation and all the technology that they have available. We also learn from current events. So with all this, you also learn what could possibly be happening in their lives. This is part of the reason why I became a school resource officer. I wanted to figure out a way to bridge the gap between law enforcement out on street patrol and better understanding the youth and the next generation that's going to start becoming adults and become adults into society. See, so the more I learn from the generation and the youth in the high schools, particularly, I get to know more about them. I get to learn more about their background, their history, their thoughts, their feelings, what makes them tick. So as they become adults, in turn, I can use this to help educate other law enforcement officers that didn't have the opportunity to, or choose to work with juveniles and understand how they develop and become the way they are as adults out in the communities. So in other words, I'm trying to take a mentorship, role model type approach to the youth and help them understand they can learn from me as I can learn from them. It's a give and take exchange for success. So by learning their culture and their neighborhood, family foundation and education level and all this social group stuff, I can get a better understanding on why some of them make the decisions that they make. Where can I help them become successful? Where do they need help in anything in particular? And it doesn't always have to be, whether you violate the law or not. Okay. One of the best things that I can say about New York, which I haven't been back in a long time, but it's that it's the most diverse city in the United States. I mean, there's probably not an ethnicity or nationality in the world that does not live in New York City. So what I learned from that, and what I like about growing up in New York City, is the diversity, the neighborhood. You learn the family foundations of ethnicities and their cultures, which helps you communicate more effectively when you travel. And the same thing goes for the military, because I've been to 13 countries, and each country has its own way of doing things. They have their own culture. So you learn how to communicate effectively then. And this is an experience that not many people get to have, and more or less even share, besides, the good times there. But when you learn cultures and the neighborhood, the family foundation, education levels, and current events, this helps you communicate better, and it builds your character and show the impartiality of who you're communicating with. Okay. There's a quote by Robert Fulghum. He says, "We can learn a lot from crayons. Some are sharp, some are pretty, some are dull, while others are bright, some have weird names, but they all have learned to live together in the same box." Just think about that. This is diversity. Okay. Diversity, understanding it, learning it, and learning each other and the background, helps for a better understanding and communication for everybody. But not only that, it leads to the E in Leafs, which is educate. You educate yourself and you educate others. You educate yourself with social media. It's dominating everything with technology right now. Music, it's been around probably since the beginning of time. Everybody listens to music for whatever purposes, to either calm themselves, to put them in a specific mood, to, maybe educate themselves in a specific genre. You also got to educate yourself in careers, the lifestyles, cultures, and most of all, you got to pay attention, though. All right, this is where hearing and understanding and effective listening come into play. So it's not what you do for your children, but what you have taught them to do for themselves. Now, when I say this, it's not what you do for your children, but what you have taught them to do for themselves. That's what will make them successful human beings. Okay. So you got to educate yourself, and then you got to help educate others, right from wrong. You get to teach them. You also get to teach them about conflict resolution, which is going to be the next episode, episode 5. But conflict resolution and the bullying, disputes, arguments, you got to educate them on these things. Life skills, which is something I'm very passionate about. It talks life skills about jobs, resumes, interviews, college, military, careers, different options. What kind of pathway do you want in your life to be successful? And then you also relate these experiences and share some of your own life experiences with them and let them share theirs. So see, this is what I'm trying to do, and this is why I created the podcast. It is to have a readily available resource for adults, but mainly for the students and the children growing up, or for adults to use with their children to teach life skills. I'm sharing my experiences from the diverse environment that I grew up in to the diverse environment I began my career with at 18 years old in the military, and my travels to other countries and experiences, and share them with everybody. So let's acknowledge the individual. You want to reach out to them. You want to respond to their needs. You want to engage with their needs. You want to assist their needs, care for their needs, and then help their needs. So when I say reach out to them, that's exactly what reach is. The R is for responding to their needs. The E is for engaging with their needs. The A is for assisting their needs. The C is for caring for their needs. And the H is for helping with their needs. And that's essentially what I do day in, day out as a resource officer. I respond to the needs of the children. I engage with them. I assist them in whatever I could. And I care for them and help in any way I can. That is my purpose. That is my goal. And this is why I love what I do. But I never ignore them. And you shouldn't either. Maybe they may tell you something that could relate to safety. They may be in trouble or in need. They may need a person to trust and that listens. And all information is valuable. Do not ever disregard or shove aside any information that is given to you. So you can't change what you don't acknowledge. You can't change what you don't acknowledge. So F in Leafs is follow up and or follow through. You got to stay true to your word. Work with the individual, not against them. Keep the promise or don't make one, point blank. Okay? Don't make promises you can't keep. You got to lead by example and be a positive role model for your youth. But you got to be consistent about it. You got to say what you mean and mean what you say. Provide accurate knowledge. Point the individual in the correct direction. Give them positive feedback and reinforcement. You can't just say, hey, go do this, because that's not leading from the front. Okay? Anybody can say, hey, point a finger and point at somebody and you do that. That's not effective. That's not effective leadership. That's not effective work environment or school environment or anything. All right? You got to lead by example and be a positive role model, but you also got to give them positive feedback. This is why I wanted you to go there and do this. Okay? You don't tell them to do something without and then give them specific instructions. You want to be able to tell them to do something and then let them figure it out and come back, see how they did whatever task you assigned them, but then give positive feedback and reinforcement. All right, so now they're using their own brain, their own experiences, okay? And you're also reinforcing that with your experiences and possibly how you would have came to accomplish that specific task as well, just to add on to their experience and understanding, if that makes sense. So the S is support. You always want to support the youth. You want to support each other as part of teamwork, right? You support talents, you support ideas, you support dreams. Never tell them that they can't or won't. You got to show the child the way. You got to help them find help when they're in trouble and be there with a loving heart. I know sometimes that last part, be there with a loving heart, can be hard to do because of pride and ego. You got to check that at the door. Can't let pride and ego affect how you do things. This is what gets officers in trouble. This is what gets most people in trouble, not just in law enforcement, but anything you do. You let your pride get to you, and your ego, and it causes you to be emotional and react emotionally or impulsively, and it's usually resulting in negative results, feedback. So pride and ego, just leave it at home. Okay. You got to be there with a loving heart. Okay. You can't let that affect your pride or your ego. So again, let's review Leafs. You got to listen, you got to learn, not just learning in schools and education, but learn from each other. You got to educate yourself, and you got to educate each other. Acknowledge each other and their differences, and then you got to follow up and follow through and show support. Understanding and communicating effectively helps to build relationships needed to help guide those in the right direction. And that is our goal. 6 pillars of character and Leafs. It helps point our youth and each other in the right direction for positive results. If you're just, constantly complaining or always presenting problems and no solutions, then it's effort. There's no effort to be done. Okay. If there is a legit problem or issue, you might want to think about what results that you can come up with or brainstorm with to be able to solve whatever issue that you see presented. This is what helps effective communication and productive communication. But it all starts with character, how you go about things. All right. Well, I won't keep you any longer. I hope this helps bring some understanding or clarity, and help point our youth in the right direction. Mentorship, leadership, this is what we strive for as resource officers. Thank you for your time. Until next week. Next week's episode is on conflict resolution, and see you then. Today's music was provided by The Sanchez. Check them out at Instagram at The Sanchez. Have a good week, folks. Stay safe.